Welcome to today's webinar titled Transitioning to Online Clinical Learning. The format will be a panel discussion featuring Kathleen Williamson, President and Academic Dean at Mount Carmel College of Nursing, and Scott Dolan, Associate Dean of Undergraduate Programs, also at Mount Carmel. Thank you both for joining me today. Mount Carmel has had some success in transitioning to online clinical and classroom learning. To what would you attribute that success?
Well, thanks, Brian, for the opportunity to share what we've learned transitioning all our programming that was face-to-face to an online environment, particularly our clinical learning and how that was going to look. And you're right, there are opportunities that we've learned from this, and one is being able to leverage technology in a short period of time. We only had a couple days to transition the faculty who were teaching in a face-to-face environment and our clinical experiences and how we were going to do that. And so it really was all of us gathering together in support of faculty, including the faculty who were online, and how they supported them and became mentors for them. And the opportunity really was, in 3 days, how can we get our clinical and our classrooms didactic into that online environment? So I'll ask Scott if he has anything to add to.
Yeah, well, like you pointed out, Kathy, I think one of the things that we did effectively is we took a step back and we looked at what we had available, the resources and tools that we had available to us in-house that would allow us to make that quick pivot. And some of the resources and tools that we had at our disposal were that we did have faculty who were familiar with teaching in the online mode. And we already had tools, tools at our disposal, tools like Unbound Medicine, learning tools and such that we could put into place quickly. I would say that the other thing that we did too is we chunked the transition. So we went into it realizing this was like March the 14th when we decided to shut down. We shut down for 3 days, and we told our faculty the only thing you need to prepare for and get ready for on the next Monday was we're transitioning all of your theory courses and your lectures to synchronous online meeting formats. Then we took the next week to assist them in moving moving their clinicals to virtual simulations. And we built time so that everybody was in the building on the premises at the same time, while obviously keeping that social distance. But we had resources and tools available for them to get help or help each other.
Yeah, and that was the biggest opportunity. And I think Scott said a couple of things, is that we kept it synchronous in the time frame, and we made sure the technology was available there. So everything from a webcam to a headset, the technology they had in their classroom, including the students, and ensuring the students had that capability to still connect and that we wouldn't lose that connection.
That's fantastic. And I also want to remind our listeners and our viewers that Mount Carmel is in Ohio. It was one of the first that had shut down. So you guys really did have to act quickly
Yes.
in order to in the response.
Yes.
So the next question I would have is what are your strategies for clinical education come this fall?
I think our strategies, we're going into the fall knowing that more than likely we will be maintaining a synchronous lecture mode, because we are a smaller campus and we don't have the physical space as some of the larger campuses do. But we will maintain, we will start to reintegrate students back into the skills lab and into the clinical setting. And we realize that we're going to do that in a stepped fashion. So one of the strategies that we'll be using is we will be bringing students back to campus, and you have to stop and think, to not all at once, obviously, but we'll be bringing them back in smaller clinical groups at the beginning of fall semester to assess their tactile hands-on skills. Maybe skills and procedures that they haven't had the opportunity to complete in a while. They've been in a virtual simulation experience. So we know we're going to have to bring them back and give them a chance to practice and check on their competency. Then the other discussion that we've had is don't expect too much of them right out of the chute. So the first couple of weeks of clinical, there'll be a lot of coaching to be built in. You know, it will be a reintroduction period for them. So Kathy, what?
Yeah, and I think other strategies too, though, are really having a conversation with faculty as well as our clinical partners. And how are our partners going to perceive the opportunity to get back to that clinical education? Some of our partners have asked us to not bring students in right away. So this fall or this summer, we're still not in the clinical settings. We're slowly integrating that throughout the summer. And hopefully in the fall, we can have a reintegration of students in our clinical partners. And so strategies would really be working with your partners and finding out what their needs are. Everybody is setting a policy or a procedure or a guideline or a recommendation or a pledge of sorts for students to move forward in relationship to particularly COVID. And so we want to make sure that our students are protected as well as faculty when they get out there. The only way to do that is working with our partners on how that transition will look.
Got it. Great.
And I think that the other thing that I would add to that is remain flexible, because you know, everything that we hear right now, fall into winter is either going to be really, really great or it's going to be really, really bad.
Yeah.
So you know, be flexible and build flexibility into your plan.
Yeah.
So that if you need to, you know, much like we did in the spring, if you need to change midstream, you have that flexibility to do so.
And a lot of times too is, you know, we are staying still remote learning, but the strategy now can be focused more on that opportunity and working with our clinical partners and getting our students out for that hands-on piece. But that slowly integration, because if there's a chance to pivot again, you know, we want to be able to do that. And so I guess that might lead to this next question, really, virtual sim products.
Yes. There's been a lot of discussion about virtual simulation products and you know how they're going to be used in the fall. So would love to hear your insights on how you'll be using them at Mount Carmel.
Yeah, we started using them actually when we went virtual in March. We've been using a variety of different products, but the main thing and the purpose of using any particular simulation product or any of the things that we've picked on as far as technology is to ensure the students are getting the curriculum as planned and maintaining their progression and student outcomes. That was very important to all of us. And so the products that we picked were ones that we knew can help us make sure that we can continue to meet our program outcomes as well as each course outcome without the student losing any knowledge towards their progression in the program. And so I'll let Scott talk more deeply about some of the products that we selected and why we selected them.
So some of the products that we selected because we had a standing relationship with the vendor already. For example, Lippincot's virtual simulation products came in very handy. We had clinical instructors that were familiar with those. They worked with us and we got switched over to those quickly. iHuman, we had already started a relationship with iHuman for the graduate program. We were in talks with the iHuman rep for the undergraduate program, so it was a natural progression. But more importantly, the reason that we were even considering these products is they met the goal for what we needed to do. And anytime that you're using simulation, you have to stop and ask yourself, how is simulation operating in this setting? And ideally, simulation is that connection point between theory and clinical. And I think the one thing that we have seen success with simulation is we've been able to be, in the spring semester, we were able to be purposeful with our simulation. Not that we weren't in the past, but I would say, let me rephrase that, more purposeful. And we were able to take simulations and fit those and use simulations that matched theory to clinical practice. So it does bridge that gap. It gives the students more of an understanding. And actually, for term 2 in the spring, which was primarily the spring shutdown period from March until May, many of our courses saw an increase in our ATI proctored exam grades in each course. And one of the things that they're attributing that to is the way that they integrated simulation into their course. So obviously for the fall, if we need to continue to use simulation, we'll continue to capitalize on some of the best practices that we've seen so far this year.
And we understand too, every state is different in relationship to how their board perceives the use of simulation. So I'd always have the caveat is making sure that you understand your Board of Nursing rules and regulations, and some are more liberal in the opportunity to use sim, but what Scott was saying is so important is that it really does have to fit your curriculum, and then also use your simulation specialist person. And she and our person here was really onboarded to really help make the connections on using the various virtual simulation products in each course, so that there was a person there that could assist if needed.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And Dr. Carmel's been a big, has been a user of Nursing Central for a while. So just curious for some of our other Nursing Central customers and potential customers, how does Nursing Central fit into your clinical strategy for the fall?
Well, I wouldn't say, I'm not going to confine it just to the fall, Brian. I think one of our responsibilities as nursing educators is, you know, we're constantly told and reminded that the students we're dealing with today are technology natives, that they're savvy in the use of technology. And I find that to be true to an extent, but it's our job as educators to equip them with the tools and work with them to teach them how to use those tools to deliver safe and competent care when they're in the clinical setting, both as a student nurse and more importantly, when they progress on and become nurses and they're out there and practice on their own. You know, Nursing Central fits right into that because they have it from the time that they begin their sophomore sequence here, clear through till the time after they graduate. So when you think about that new nurse who's out there on the unit, you know, maybe in the first 2 or 3 months of practice, and they have a question and there may not be a preceptor or somebody available, one of the tools that they'll have available to them is they can refer back to Nursing Central and the great resources that you had there. You know, my goodness, I think back when I first became a nurse, I think if I would have had products that Nursing Central offered to carry into the clinical setting, you know, on something like an iPhone or an iPad, that would have made all the difference in the world. So it's really, Nursing Central is one of those main tools that we can put in there. Well, it's not a main tool. I'll compare Nursing Central to a toolbox because there are several tools in Nursing Central that we just guide them on how to use.
And it's a pretty, you know, powerful tool. And, you know, the opportunity really from our clinical setting that went virtual really was an opportunity for a deep dive into it too, because they did a lot of unfolding case studies, or through their simulation experiences, they had to go into the Nursing Central product and go and look up all the stuff that they would as if they were at the bedside with anyone. So I think it offered an opportunity for faculty even to dig deeper into the product to really utilize its features. And I think that's also, there were a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of them were the opportunities to leverage what we have and actually really utilize them into a fuller extent than what we were using them.
That's fantastic. So this is going to be the end of part 1 of a series that we're being able to speak with Kathleen and Scott. So if you want to see part 2, please continue on. If not, if you have any questions about Nursing Central, any unbound products, or anything that has to do with what's being discussed today in this webinar, please reach out anytime. I'd like to thank Kathy and Scott for meeting with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.